Hey, welcome to the EIG podcast. Before it starts, I want to let you know who we're talking to. We're talking to a Metro Detroit business owner who has a landscaping company. He has a crazy, amazing story. You're going to want to make sure you listen to this full podcast, get some popcorn, maybe put it on as you drive, because we talk about a lot in this podcast, and you're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and that like button. Okay, let's get into the podcast. Thanks, guys.
Is into like this. So disclaimer, and I didn't even tell you this before.
Oh, cool.
There's an aspect to entrepreneur culture that I
don't
hate.
like.
Basically, that idea of like you make your come up story or, you know, what you overcame. You can look backwards and like talk about certain things having a purpose that they just happened. Or I'm not saying things don't have a purpose, but you can look back and you can paint a picture because it's behind you.
Right.
But when people start out, they don't always have this clear destination in mind. And you may pivot and change, and now you're doing something else, and that's part of life.
Sure.
And people will pretend sometimes that, like, that was the plan all along, or, that's not, like, a huge pet peeve of mine, but people do, you know, they like to paint their story in the best way possible. But
Do you feel that, because I think there's two ways to look at that as an entrepreneur. Like, the culture is bring yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And I went overcame these things, but I think also the reason why people, even podcasts like these or videos like these, like, people resonate with, if only I would have known this when I started. Because you're right, like, when we jump into certain careers, we don't even necessarily know if this is what we want to do.
right.
Like, this is like, oh, I want to start an insurance agency. I hate insurance. Like, like when I first started, I didn't know that if this was going to be a 3-month thing, a 6-month thing. I knew I needed a job.
Sure.
Like, and so I agree with that. But then looking back, I'm like, dang, if I could have known this when I started, this whole journey would have been so much easier.
Right.
So I think that's the one nice thing though about entrepreneurs reflecting on their failures, as long as they can do it in like a, honest way. Because it helps people like us that are trying to build businesses. Like, you're trying to build a business, I'm trying to build a business, and we're still like growing in that way. We like listening to other entrepreneurs and their failures.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think people have incredible stories. I'm not saying everybody's lying or like, that's not my point. Maybe one thing I don't like about entrepreneur culture, if you'd call it that, is that there's a big push to find like your passion, your purpose, and not bad things, like great things. The challenge is that like you don't know what that thing is often before you're starting. I mean, think about in college, how many people start in one major and change majors before they graduate, right? Like, if we listed off our friends, I mean, tons of them changed majors. And that's not that's not bad. It's just the fact that you're discovering as you go along what you like, what you don't like. Within that, what is hard is that everything has a side of it that you don't enjoy. So figuring out like what are you willing to deal with and push through. I don't know. It's entrepreneur culture. I should stop using that term. The culture now that really is targeted at especially young people like us and younger, it plays to your emotions and your desires of like an easier, quicker, more rewarding path. Yep. And that is what I don't like.
I think that's a perfect start to jumping into your story, because I think you're right. And we touched on this on the last podcast we just talked about, is there is almost like a get rich easy, quick, like, if you're going to get rich, be an entrepreneur. And it's like, this is the path that you should take if you want all of the, look at my, like, even like people that are on, like, look at my car and look at this. I know that there was this one guy it was an ad on YouTube. Like, he always had he was in his library.
Knowledge.
And yeah, he's
Ty
like,
Lopez.
Ty Lopez. And he was like, I have a Lamborghini, blah, 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 blah. But forget those cars. The books are what I'm proud about. I want knowledge. And it's like, bull crap. Like, you like your car. Like, let's be real. And I think that the danger with people that they need to understand before they jump into a career where they own a business is, I would argue after 5 years, there's more dark times than bright times.
Yeah.
I like.
I couldn't agree with that more.
And actually, before we jump into that conversation, I want to introduce our first guest of the podcast. His name is Derek Doran. Derek, I'm just going to let you have the floor for like 30 seconds to a minute. If you could tell everyone who you are, what you do now, and then like what your journey started as, quick little life synopsis, and we'll come back to asking you more questions about your life. But go ahead. Welcome to the channel.
Yeah. Glad to be here. And so I don't know. I've never been in this situation to give a synopsis of my life, but 27, almost 28 in a few weeks. I'm married to my wife, Jen. We've been married almost 6 years now and have a son named Patrick. He's 8 months old, so that's been the newest development in my life, which has made my life way more fun and awesome. So, but that was already 30 seconds. Sorry.
No, go.
I currently own a lawn care and landscaping company. We do some other services, but in the home services industry. And I've been doing this for 2 years. Grew up doing this type of work just to pay for college, and with my brothers and my parents, helping us have an avenue to make money. So never worked traditional jobs growing up. It was always family stuff, paper routes, and mowing lawns, which I think is the best way because you start to see the reward for your effort and your time rather than just punching the clock. And so that was kind of my background, but there's a ton of curveballs in that.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm that old with all this life experience, but quick summary would be always planned on going into ministry.
Okay.
And my father's a pastor. My oldest brother is a pastor.
He's my pastor.
Was always planning to go into ministry. Had some big life events, and my life kind of got flipped upside down at the end of high school. And just kind of, I don't know if there's a good way to say it, lost myself. And when I was coming back around, hopped back on the track that I was, which was pursuing ministry. And although my relationship with God and at my church is central to my life, I started to realize, I don't know that vocational ministry for a career is actually what I want to pursue at this time. I've still wrestled with that. I actually think ministry is still a possibility down the road. So I was interning at a church. The part of that internship was that I was pursuing ministry. So when I realized that's not the path anymore, my dad and I had a conversation. Was like, look, you can't be employed here if you're not pursuing ministry. And there you go. 2 weeks from now, I need to do something else. So I started a lawn care business. And it wasn't like, oh, I guess I'll do this. I actually really wanted to start a lawn care business. So I went into that.
When did the lawn care business, because you did it as a kid, you said, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So you did it as a kid. When you were a kid, we're like, man, this is fun. When I grow up, this is an option for me? Or did it kind of come back to you when you were trying to rack your brain of things to do? When was the lawn care kind of oh, I could do this?
That's a good question. So my brothers all did it as well. I was the weird one that I really enjoyed the work. And I kind of fell in love with the equipment, just the way you cut grass, which sounds nerdy, but anybody that has mowed lawns,
I know.
They respect when you do a good job, So I really, in the end of high school, I grew to love the industry, but it was always maybe I'll do this bivocationally, maybe I'll do it on the side just to make extra income. I wasn't always thinking business ownership. So yeah, but I had always had an interest in that line of work, and I knew there were ways to grow it and scale it as opposed to just a traditional job.
So let's jump into that. So this is cool. When I was a kid, this was my first job, actually. I didn't tell you that. Every kid, I think if you're a parent out there, get your son out mowing lawns. It's does a couple things. Number one, it did for me is it got me out of my shell. I'm a talker. So So Derek's known me for a little bit, but like I talk a lot, but I only talk to people that I know. So like when I was growing up, when I was a kid, like it was so bad when I was a kid, my parents would order for me at restaurants. Like I was one of those kids that I just did not like to talk because like I don't know who you are. If I knew you, I'd talk. What my dad said was I wanted something. I don't remember what I was like. I wanted something, whatever. We didn't get allowance growing up, and my dad was like, "Hey, well, you have to earn money. Here's a couple ways you could do it." And I picked long, whatever. He went, printed a bunch of flyers, and I knocked on all these doors all over across our neighborhood. And I'm scared to death, but it broke out this like salesman in me of like, this is fun. And when I think we passed out like 100 flyers before we got the first call back.
Yeah.
My dad had this small Dodge Neon. Okay. It's like a tiny car. We shoved a push mower in the trunk, broke everything down, drove out there. This guy, I don't know. I mowed it for like $15. It was like just, I don't remember, maybe $10 actually.
Right.
Just because I was a kid. I mean, I thought I was rich at that point. And so, that was one of my first jobs too. And so like it taught me so much of like hard work equals getting paid, like you're earning your wages.
Right.
And so I think that was a cool thing. When did you say, okay, I enjoy the work, I want to turn this into a business?
Yeah. So it was in that period of like, obviously it's not just usually I'm not going to pursue ministry. There's something else that you're kind of drawn to. You could see yourself doing otherwise. And, that's what really drew me was, okay, if I'm not doing ministry, this is something that I'm passionate about. And I knew that to make it successful, you'd have to, it's great when you like what you do. But if you are too romantic about something, you can really get caught up in the equipment and all the stuff, and you need to look at it kind of just from a number standpoint. Like if I'm going to pay the bills, some things have to fall in line, and there needs to be margin here. It has to be able to scale, and that's when I was married when I left that ministry job. It wasn't like this is some little thing. I was married. And, I had a house.
How long were you and Jen married for before you took this leap?
We got married in 2017, and that was 2018 in the spring. So a year and a few months.
Man.
So
married with a house, with a job.
Yep.
Job ended up not working out due to just where you thought your life was heading. And then
zero income.
You said, if you don't mind, I want to like a little inside look to the marriage, because this is important. The very first podcast I released was talking about moral support, having support.
Oh, it's extremely
inside
important.
If you're married or if you have family or friends, like if you're renting with somebody, like having that support, because it takes time. That was the number one thing that I talked about. If you're going to start a business, it takes time to make money.
Right.
And so when you said, Jen, this is something I want to do, like what was that like working through that with her? Because sometimes I feel like, it's different on their personality too. On their, like, what we always have to know as business owners is like our spouses also have a risk tolerance.
Oh, yeah.
And it might not be the same as our risk tolerance. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'm curious on how those conversations kind of started shaping up.
Sure. So first and foremost, all right, if you're married, if you have kids, like, at my core, who is Derek Doran? Business owner has to fall down on the list like lower.
Yeah.
Right? I can fail in business and go get another job, but I am married. Now I'm a father. That's got to be first. So even if I have these grand desires of being an entrepreneur, I just got to be on the same page with Jen. And thankfully, she supported me and was cool with it. And I'm a very obsessive person. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are that go into
I think you have to be
these type of endeavors.
Really do,
but I'm annoyingly obsessive. And she wouldn't say that because she's too nice. But, like, I've just always had things I get obsessed with. Like, just nonstop. It could be a hobby even. Mm-hmm. So she knows that, like, when I get my mind caught on something, it's not like a issue of like, will I give it my full attention? It's more maybe like, is this really something to stick with, and figuring that out. And she knew by that point, like, you know, she was all on board. Honestly, financially, I've never, because that's the part of it too, right?
Yeah.
You're leaving stability
Yep.
and a paycheck you can count on, benefits. There wasn't really a lot of fear there. One, because we did have a safety net from saving up, but two, it was just like, I'll do whatever it takes. So, you know, you don't want to be arrogant. You don't want to say like, tomorrow I'm going to go and make a profit and have this cockiness to you. But if you have a confidence in your work ethic
Yep.
where it's like, I'll do whatever I have to do.
Yep.
I'm not even asking Jen to do whatever she has to do.
Yep.
She would, and she did work. But, I mean, it just, yeah, she was all on board, and I think that's extremely important.
So I say the phrase humble confidence. You need to have a humble confidence. Humble in the sense of you don't know anything yet. And you know you don't know anything yet. We're learning.
Right.
But the confidence that, hey, I know I can make this work. Like, and even if I don't make it work, I have the humility to admit it, like when it maybe isn't going as well as we thought. So maybe I'd love to take it there next. Okay. So in your journey, you're starting to get clients potentially, you know, through the church and your relationships, and you have those in place. When was the first, like, was there a honeymoon period of with your business of, man, like, why didn't I do this sooner? And if it was going well and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, or was it a slow start that ramped up slowly?
Yeah, so, we can get into this, but I had my business originally. But that's not actually the business I have now. So
Right.
that
Yes,
was
correct.
4 Seasons Yard Care or whatever.
Yes.
So that first season was largely positive. I mean, I always kind of look back with, you know, a positive
A little
view.
nostalgia.
But it was largely positive, just learning. I basically did everything wrong. Like, so I jumped into things. YouTube heavily influenced my decisions. I would follow, believe it or not, it may sound weird to other people, but like there's a whole lawn care YouTuber community.
Yeah.
And there's
no,
a guy
yeah.
actually in Southeast Michigan. He's one of the biggest guys. And he wasn't big then, so that was kind of cool connecting with him. But not the best decisions for actually how to run a profitable business you want to scale. They were better for like, if you want to have your own business, that's Derek's Lawn Care, and you're still in the field mowing. But I knew at the end of the year one, this can work. There's something here. I got to make these changes. And so
Can we talk? I'd love
Sure.
to get granular because
whatever you want.
The goal. I mean, the people that are listening. I was looking at our analytics for this podcast. Over 50% are in the ages from 18 to 24.
Sure.
So whoever's watching this, if there's an 18-year-old,
That's how old I was.
when you started this,
Yep.
right? And so like I would love to know, like, if I'm an 18-year-old wanting to mow yards for college money, okay, or whatever, but I want to maybe build it in a way that I can continue to do this after college. What were some of those mistakes that you wish that now you know this is something I should have thought through differently?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is like you don't know how far you can go with it. You have to have some sort of an idea where you're going, though. You know, if you're wanting to grow this company with multiple crews on the road and you're not the main revenue producer, you got to go a different route than if you're just wanting to start. You are the person when you're working, money is being made, which that's typically how all of them start, is the owners actually producing revenue. But there's different routes you can go, but it's hard. I would say I would back up. There are so many resources. Whatever you pursue these days, it seems like there's someone out there that has enough social credit, whatever you want to say, that like, okay, they're not a scam artist. They know what they're doing. They're proven in their industry, and you can learn from them for free. Learn everything you can for free first, because there's tons of courses out there. I wouldn't even suggest someone get a course these days because there's so many free things on YouTube or whatever, books, podcasts. I would push them to somebody that just has put in tons of content that they can watch for free. And start there, because you don't even know what questions to ask. As you learn, you'll start asking new questions, problem solving. But I guess I would start there. The things I learned, it's hard to put my mind back in that stage. But for one, I was not charging enough money. And it's really hard when you're starting out to have the knowledge or even the confidence to charge what you need. Because typically, what are most of our jobs when we're growing up? They're $1 per hour. Even big boy jobs, right, are salary, but you can break them down to $1 per hour.
Right.
If you're thinking of in terms of back then, I was making $10 an hour working at the museum.
Right.
That was probably my first legit hourly job, which back then was good money for a teenager.
Yeah.
If you're thinking in terms of $10 an hour, make it 15 these days or whatever. You may think, I just need to make that much per hour, and you start thinking of that for what you're going to charge for your time. You'll quickly find out that you'll be losing money just because you've got a business now. You've got insurance, you've got overhead, all those things, right? So pricing is a huge thing. And most people in my industry, when they start out, super low pricing and almost impossible to grow your business unless you get over that.
So when you look at this is really interesting to me because I don't know.
Yeah, this is probably really different from insurance.
This is why I'm I have no idea how you price a lawn.
Right.
That's actually intriguing to me because I would think it's okay, well, so we have a double lot where we live. And I remember we're talking to you and hey, can you move? So you're well, my crew, and we were talking about if it's a good or bad or what we could do, right? But I always wonder, is it okay, you look at the square footage and we can cut this amount in X amount of time, and is it a time thing? Is it a job
Right.
thing? At what point is it not $1 per hour? And if it's not $1 per hour, how do you price in the lawn care business?
So just strictly speaking for what I do, because I think
Everyone's different.
There's a lot of principles that carry over, but
sure,
it all comes down to time for me because I'm paying my employees for their time, and the labor is the biggest variable expense in my business.
Cost, yeah.
And what I actually do, and so Augusta Lawn Care is what I'm with. It's actually a franchise brand, and I chose to do that differently from just Derek's Lawn Care for a few reasons, but there's a ton of benefits just with the network of the community of owners there. I still own the business. I have that freedom, but I basically give up the right to have my name on the company.
Sure,
right?
sure.
And I was willing to give that up because I could also sell it easier.
Yeah.
So that's another discussion, but
I do want to come back to this, by the way. So we have to come back to this because this is actually super interesting to me. But yes.
So I actually pay guys a percentage of what they produce. I try to break them of the mindset of $1 per hour.
Interesting.
Because why should the guy that is busting his tail and outproducing the other guys be paid the same amount of money, or maybe $1 or $2 more per hour? Because that's what a lot of traditional lawn companies, you got a foreman, they make
a
$2 more per hour.
Correct, right.
And you got this slacker who makes whatever the base pay is. So ours is base pay, your hourly rate.
Correct.
You cannot make less than that. But now there is no ceiling. And you can make as much as you produce in a day. And there's quality control, because if you're going fast and making mistakes, you got to go back and fix it.
And that's going to eat up your time and your profitability.
But for a service industry, especially when labor is such a huge aspect of your business, it really incentivizes good behavior and aligns the business's success with the employee's success. But your question was, how do you price? ultimately what I do now is square footage.
Yep.
But the square footage numbers are based on what's the average time to mow that lawn. And if you had a business and I had a business, those numbers aren't the same, because I use walk behind mowers. Most people do not want to do that. They want to sit on a zero turn. I don't do that for various reasons, but ultimately because I think it's more if I can send one guy out with a truck and he can crank out these small lawns with a push mower, and you got these other companies, and I don't want to disrespect anybody else. They figure it too.
Yeah.
But they've got a culture where, like, the one guy, he just wants to sit on the zero turn all day. You know, there's no right or wrong. You can do zero turns. That would be great. But we use push mowers. So we charge for what makes sense for us with a push mower. Somebody on a zero turn can do it faster probably, and they charge less. It's, you know.
But I'll add to this really quick. To me, there's a difference, though, if someone that does push mower or someone does zero turn on a small lawn.
Yeah.
Like, you can, like, the visual lines of a push mower on a small, like, city lawn versus a zero turn. Because I've had my lawn zero turn before, and I have, like, I'm like, oh, it looks like flat. Like, I don't see the lines. Like,
Sure.
I really enjoy the, like, you know, diagonal lines, or like the different lines a push mower can do. Does that have any part of, like, your thought process?
Another aspect, because, like, some people would be like, zero turn looks better. You know, ultimately, the market decides a lot of things. The market decides pricing to a degree. Like, what's that phrase is, a markup is what the market can bear, right? If I bought this mug for 10 cents and sold it to you for $1, you're willing to pay $1.
Sure.
If I said $10, well, how many people could I get to buy that mug for $10? There's real economic factors where, like, you can't just charge whatever. People have to be willing to pay it because of competition. They could go somewhere else. But where was I going with that idea?
Well, honestly, you just led us in a perfect break for our sponsors. So we're going to do that right now.
Sweet.
This video is sponsored by England Insurance Group. If you're just tired of getting sold to by agents that are trying to upsell you to make more commission, you can go to englandinsuranceGroup.com. There you'll be able to get a quote without actually having to talk to an agent. Put in some general information, and then a little slider will pop up that kind of will give you a good idea of how much life insurance could cost you. If you're interested in getting more information, you can just hit that button that says Get My Final Rate, and there you're going to be able to go and get more details on how much life insurance would be, again, without having to talk to an agent. And right beneath that is a form. If you're interested in talking to me, I'll reach out to you directly and help you with any life insurance needs that you have. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. Let's go back to the podcast. I mean, man, that is really interesting to me, how you can bring commission into what you would have a standard hourly rate. And what I mean by that is it's like being a waiter. It's like being a waiter is really what it's like, because I grew up, I served a Steak and Shake. That was my gig. You did lawns, I did Steak and Shake, right? And we had the best $3.99 $4 meal.
Small fries.
Oh, it's so good. Shoestring fries. Anyway, so, like, I had the base pay, and then my tips were my commission. And so I made $15 to $17 an hour in high school.
Nice.
As a waiter at Steak and Shake.
That was good back then.
It was very good back then. It was very good. And the cool thing was, like, I got paid my worth, because there were other waiters that were making $10 an hour that weren't working as hard. And it would have been such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it would be demotivating for me getting paid the same as them. So the fact that you're bringing that model into lawn care is awesome. And I mean, I think that you're only going to see good things happen. Is that industry wide? Is that, like, Derek being different? Or where did you hear of this model in the landscape? And is this starting to be prevalent?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that last part, because this is not my idea. Performance pay, first off, has been around. There's a guy that I really respect, has a gutter business, and he does performance pay. The term that I use, based on who I'm associated with, Augusta Lawn Care, our owner of the franchise, his name's Mike Andes, he has really coined this term, pay for performance. Okay. He has a book. Anybody in the service industry, I'd really recommend looking into that. You can go to mikeandes.com or whatever. But that idea was formed through going back to, I said, you should look for people online that have tons of free content. He's the guy that I first found, literally through just looking up landscaping podcast.
So pay for performance?
So pay for performance is something he developed, this idea, and he has a software as well.
Cool.
But that's not my grand idea that I came up with, but it's something I implemented, and anybody could do it. It's not unique in the sense of like paying someone based on their production.
Sure. Oh, of course.
But
But have you seen a direct? So let's take one step back, because this is interesting to me. So you had Derek Lawn Care, okay, or whatever you called it.
Yeah.
Derek's
4 seasons.
Derek's business. His. You started that. You took a break.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to get to that. So you
2 years off.
Took a 2-year sabbatical from business ownership.
I made so much money in that first season. I just vacationed for 2 years.
But so
No,
so
I
you took a break.
made no money.
Yeah,
the
so can we
first year,
talk about
just
that?
to be clear.
Yeah, so you how long were you did you have 4 seasons before you stopped? You worked with a different company for a while. You got a different job, back to your normal kind of type pay, benefits, that kind of stuff. You did that for 2 years, right?
Yep.
So, and then you went back to wanting to go back to lawn care. So can we talk about what made you stop?
Yeah.
What brought you back?
Yeah, so it's kind of a unique, I hate to
And that's
sound
a loaded question. I know it's a loaded question, but
it's an interesting story. So,
Okay.
right, pursuing ministry, I pivoted and I started my own business. And I made it through the season, which doesn't sound like much to people, but basically like, you get through your first full year serving customers, building up a customer base. And at the end of it was like, let's go. I'm ready to improve next year. Mm-hmm. There were some dark moments where I'm like, and that's something I learned too, with just if you're in a seasonal industry, maybe even insurance or different, like there are
very much so.
There are rush. We call it the spring rush.
Yes.
There's also like a fall rush, but the spring rush is crazy, and that's in the industry known. But there's just slow and fast times, and as a human, you're gonna ride those emotional waves. But I came to the end thinking like, let's go another year. But I also knew I need to pay the bills. I'm gonna get a job in the winter, do some side work. The business was not there, and being in Michigan where we're at, there's just not a steady source of revenue for the business to make it through winter.
Of course.
So I got a job offer out of the blue. Like, as out of the blue.
You're not searching.
No, I was
Just
working
boom.
at a company that I interned at in college.
Yep.
I reached out to them and I was like, hey, I was working 2 jobs. I was working at Amazon in the morning.
Okay.
Loved it. 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Oh. Fast paced, but like I came in there and everybody, like that was back when $15 an hour in Michigan was like, that's good money. And Amazon opened up and they're like, hey, $15 an hour for anybody. I'm like, all right, let's do it. I need to make some money. So I would go 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Then I would go to my 9 to 5. And I worked at this company in the business office doing pretty simple work, but they needed help. And as I'm at that second job, I just get a job offer from the owner out of the blue to be his personal assistant. And this is a man that I really respect, extremely successful, extremely successful in business, but just a godly man and just someone I've always looked up to.
How could you say no?
So
pretty much.
I really thought about it, and there's a part of you that's like, am I abandoning my dream or whatever, right? And I just realized I can go back to lawn care one day. But this opportunity really appeals to me. There are things that I think I could thrive in with this. Ultimately, I decided it was a good opportunity, and I went for it. The short version would be, so I did that for 2 full years. And while that was happening, a lot of things in our world happened, right? COVID happened during those 2 years. The job didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be, and that's not because of deception by the business or anything. It's just COVID disrupted the world.
Yeah.
As well, I just, just things changed. I realized it was not for me. There was definitely a path there that was would have been very lucrative. I feel like I can say that.
Yeah. 100%.
And, but I realized I'm young enough. I really want to give this business ownership thing a shot. And I went back to it, and I went again back to $0 income, and I took a huge risk.
Okay, so this is the cool part. This is actually when I texted Derek, because this story is so cool because you went from college into not really sure what you're gonna do. You have 4 seasons going, then you quit your other stuff, 4 seasons only. So you jump into the business owner, buzzword entrepreneur,
Sure.
right? Life, valleys, hills, celebrations, that whole cycle of just what it's like to not have income some weeks or months, and then have big income months. And you learn what that's like. Then all of a sudden, you stop that with the job offer came out of the blue. You're like, okay, we're gonna stop this, but you had it in the back burner, and then 2 years later, you're back.
And to clarify, like when I took that job, I had no intention of going back to lawn care. I really thought like I got to give this my best shot, and I was like thinking I could be at this company the rest of my life. So I wasn't going into it thinking like I'm half in. I was all in on it, and just it's hard to go into details of everything. But
of course.
I decided to change.
But the details are, the whole story is really cool in the sense of when you took that job that you're like, hey, I tried this, it didn't work out. I think the average person would feel defeated. And you may have struggled with that to a degree for a while,
Right.
Like,
yeah, I thought,
man, why couldn't I made this business work out? But I think a lot of people would have never wanted to touch it again. They're like, I tried that, I got burned, and I'm done. And I was reading an interesting article. I'll see if I can share it on Facebook. But basically, it was like the average business owner fails like 3 times before they have their successful one. And so, and the same is true with sales. When we talk about sales on the channel, like when you try to make a sale, you're probably going to get told no like 20 times before you get your yes. And so in the same way, when it comes to businesses, I think a lot of young people they see these videos of these successful entrepreneurs. And this is why this is so important. I don't know what to say the F word and failed, but it didn't go.
I failed.
Okay, fine. You failed.
I was a statistic. I was a statistic. That first year in business would fall into the stat of like
the average,
however many businesses closed a year. It closed. It also profited $0. I mean, if that's not a failure.
Okay, so you failed your first job or your first business that you started.
Right.
And I think that the where I wanted to take this was like, instead of digging a hole and saying, screw it, I'm working a 9 to 5 again for the rest of my life. I'm done. I'm not going to take any more chances. What you did is you said, okay, well, on the bright side, I know what not to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then like on the bright side, I know what I need to do if I'm going to do this again. And I think that is the lesson that I take from your story is like through your first business not going exactly how you wanted it to, you had 2 roads. Road A, give up of the dream of business ownership and jump into a 9 to 5, which guys, nothing wrong to 9 to 5 at all.
Right.
Like that's what helps this whole country function. Like business, like we need employees to work. That's the whole point. But the fact that you were willing to take and learn from history and learn from your mistakes and learn from your successes. And then now I want to kind of end here is like with Augusta, okay? You had a choice, franchise or back to like your own personal thing.
Sure.
What made you say, okay, I've learned a lot with my first business not working out. I think that one of the things I may have been missing was a franchise system. Like, was it branding? Was it additional support with owners? What maybe was it that made you go Augusta versus your own thing again?
Yeah. 2 things. One, on the 9 to 5 thing too. I was talking about how I don't like some things in entrepreneur culture.
Sure.
One thing I don't like strongly is that there's a lot of shade thrown at just working a steady job. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge, like, missing the mark because Yeah, there's all ethical work is good, honorable work. And I think you can honor God. I keep saying God, but I'm religious. I am a Christian, and when I think about life and think in those terms, and there's honorable work in so many ways. So it's not like you're better if you're an entrepreneur. That's a sidebar.
By the way, we need to have the discussion on that because that's something that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
And we'll sidebar. We may have Derek back on to talk about that, not so much his company, but Augusta. Yes.
So very important. Strip away your ego. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? The best advantage I had was I had tried to do the thing that I wanted to do again, and I knew what things I wasn't good at. I just looked at it. There was a heightened sense of like, you need to deliver. This is not like maybe this works. This time, you got to make it work.
And by work, it's not just break even. Like, you got to make a profit.
I got to support my family.
Yes.
And I want to start a family.
Yes.
I'm married. I want to have kids. So I'm leaving a steady job where side detail, was making more money than I had ever made before. And I'm walking away from that. So I just knew my chance of success was higher going with a franchise. And as well, I felt like some of my strengths and my weaknesses, I would benefit from going with them. And I was, in a sense, like, if you pull away your ego is a lot of times the reason someone wouldn't consider that, because they want their own company.
Brand. Right.
I'm not saying that's the only reason, right? Some people don't need it.
Yeah.
I just saw there's systems, processes, things that I can benefit from. I think I can get to where I want to be faster with them, faster and more likely, because it's not all about speed. But so yeah, those reasons. And in a sense, I was viewing it as, this is my bachelor's in business. If I start with Augusta, why couldn't I start my own business some other time?
Yeah.
Because it is my business. Like, I pay taxes. If I fail.
And just to clarify, guys, when you own a franchise, you are the owner of that tax ID number.
Right.
Like, you are the owner of that franchise. You can sell that franchise. If the franchise fails, it's on you.
Yeah.
Like the only difference is with a franchise is you have a little bit of branding backing.
Yeah.
You have a little bit of community with other owners. And I don't know if you have discounts on any type of equipment or supplies and things like that. That would normally fall under the umbrella of a franchise.
Right.
I don't know if you do,
So one cool thing,
Sure.
and I'm long-winded, so
Dude, this is awesome.
probably going longer than you thought.
Not
But,
at all.
So this franchise is super young.
Okay.
I mean, I was franchisee number 21. So, I mean, if you think of any franchise you can name, there's probably thousands of them. So I see this as a cool thing too, because like, I truly think this franchise is going to change the industry. And that's actually the owner's goal, is like change the level of professionalism in the landscaping industry. And it may sound weird to people, but like, we know there's a stereotype with people that mow lawns, and it's often not given a lot of respect, like as a line of work.
Right.
But that's a cool aspect, is it's young. But one of the biggest things is I don't pay them, because obviously in a franchise, it's not like I just get all the benefit with no cost.
Yep.
I pay the franchise, but I don't pay them a percentage of my sales. And that was the biggest thing. That's a lot of franchises. You pay every dollar that comes in, a percentage goes in. For
Is
them,
it a flat fee?
it's fixed.
Interesting.
So what I need to do is grow my business so that fee
Fixed doesn't
becomes a
hurt as
smaller
much.
percentage.
Exactly.
And
actually, that's interesting. So really quick, because we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. That's the same in real estate, by the way.
okay.
A lot of real estate brokerages will take a percentage of your total sales. They'll give you a split.
Sure.
Then some others will give you a split with a cap. So they'll say, hey, it'll be a 70-30 or 60-40 split. Fun fact about agents, you think that 3% is going to the agent. Actually, the agent's only getting about 1.8%. Maybe 2% of that 3%.
I didn't know that.
It depends on their deal with the brokerage.
Got it.
Sometimes it's a 50-50 when you start. Agent gets 50, brokerage gets 50.
Yeah.
And then, but some brokerages have no caps. Like, you could sell $30 million in real estate, and then but a lot of brokerages that are doing it well, in my opinion, they'll have a cap. So they'll say, hey,
Yeah.
we'll take a percentage, but up to this fixed amount. than anything above that. And so what that does is it forces real estate agents to be like, hey, I want to get to this point where I hit that cap, so then everything's coming. I get 100%.
Gotcha.
And it motivates agents to sell more in a way.
Yeah.
And so that's a cool thing. I think Augusta's winning. I can already see them winning just because of that. Like, that's now at the same time though, it has to hurt more when you're small.
Yep.
Because if you have a fixed, like if they have to make money, right? The franchisor has to make money. They need to be profitable. So this only works if you grow it into something big enough to make that fixed cost small.
Yeah. And I mean, really, I signed on to something that it's like either quit, sell, or grow it. There's no like just kind of do it.
Yeah.
If I kind of do it, I'll lose money. But yeah, I love Augusta. I don't think franchising's for everybody, and franchising is a big term. You need to figure out what the actual terms are and everything. But yeah, back to your question, I recognized weaknesses of mine that I felt the franchise would help me with. And I mean, one of the things is they answer the phone for me. Like, if there's not a better way to grow your lawn care business so that you can keep working, keep selling, and somebody's just answering the phone. Now, I pay them on a per minute basis, but that was something I was like, okay, let's do this.
That makes sense.
But
You're
yeah,
looking at that from my agency. That sounds awesome.
yeah,
I mean, I think this is where this is like so cool. I mean, guys, I could talk to this for 3 hours. We need to make a Joe Rogan like 3-hour podcast on this stuff, because this is
it would be interesting to like talk about. We talked a lot about like me deciding to do this.
Yeah.
But a whole nother topic would be like what I've learned in doing this.
Yes.
Because I would say now I'm at the end of year 2 with Augusta. So really I have 3 years of experience of being self-employed, trying to start a business. I would say like up until a couple months ago, like maybe a year and a half in, was when I was like feeling like I was catching my stride.
Okay.
And there was a lot of doubt. There's always been doubt, because it's like,
Yep.
in sales or business, there's a hard reality of like you have to keep putting in work. Like at a job, you can kind of coast at a job. Like you can coast a little and still get that paycheck, or you can hide or slack off.
You got to do the bare minimum. You got to do the minimum not to get fired.
Yeah.
If you get the minimum not to get fired, you're going to keep your job. You're going to.
But there's an aspect
correct.
of business ownership or sales, commission work, whatever. You gotta like, it's all on you.
Yes.
And yeah, you gotta be willing to put up with that. So, yeah.
So on our next podcast, when you come back, we're talking about franchises, because I want to talk about franchises, because I think that is a career path a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah.
I think they're like, I want to start my own thing with my own, and I joke because I have my own branding, but like I started with a franchise situation within insurance. That's actually how I started too.
Gotcha.
I had their branding, I had materials, I had training, I had software, I had all that kind of stuff when we started. And so like, I actually started my career in a way with a franchise with a carrier. And so like,
Right.
I think that's something we could talk about. I want to talk about what you learned on our next podcast. And then I want to end here. So I just made a video, and I want to see if you agree or disagree with me.
All right.
Okay. I said that if you're going to get into entrepreneurship or business owner or sales or however you want to spin that, there are 4 things that need to be true. Okay, it's a video I just posted. I'm going to see who agrees with me. And if you disagree, then we have to do another podcast arguing about it. So it's going to be good. Number 1, I said you have to have a blanket fund. And I said you need to have like an emergency fund.
100%. Yeah.
Buy you time, right?
Yeah.
So number 1, it's going to take you time. So you need to have some sort of funds in place to make sure you can survive a couple months.
Yep.
Okay. Number 2, you need support. Like I said, family support, friend, like whoever is in your circle, you need support. So if you're married, you need your wife to be on board.
Yeah.
Because there's no, kind of what you said in your priority structure, there's no world where I'm going to do something where Anna is saying no to it. Because the moment it fails, it's going to be even a harder conversation. So like, in my journey, and we talked about this, on the previous podcast, it's like we hit some low lows, and because she was bought in from the start, it didn't even rustle a feather in our marriage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But had she been, maybe I don't think this is a good idea, and I did it anyway, and then we hit those lows, I'm quitting the first low that we hit. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's number 2. Number 3 is you need to have some sort of passion for it. And I know we can kind of agree or disagree, but I do think that passion and passion could be maybe an overt, but like you need to be interested in it. You need to be excited about it. It can't just be all about the money, because if you make it all about the money, you're just gonna, when you don't make money for 6 months, you're gonna quit.
Yeah.
And so that's number 3. And then number 4, I don't remember what it is right now. I can't remember. I was on a track. Passion, number 4. I don't remember.
I'd say on your third one. The passion could be like, so take what I do. We mow lawns. That's a huge part of what we do, the recurring work. We do other landscaping work. I was just telling you, like, at this time of year, we install Christmas lights. We do snow removal. But you could have a passion for customer service. You could have a passion for employing people. You could have a passion for mowing lawns. There's going to be aspects to what you do that you're not going to love everything. I really like the idea of trying to help other guys like my parents did for me, learning how to work, learning how to be financially frugal and wise. There's things within it that you can really latch on to that I think would be important. Maybe the work itself isn't your passion, but things connected to it or a product of it.
Or the result, right. Yeah, and the 4th thing, this is going to lead you off into a perfect ending. The 4th thing is it has to be a good product. Because I think we forget about that part. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I have a passion for this. Like, let's say it is lawn care. And let's say you want to pick a franchise. It is instrumental to your success. You pick a good franchise. And then it's instrumental that you deliver a good product to your clients. Because if you don't deliver a good client, then a good product, you're not going to get referrals. They're not going to renew your contract.
Right.
Like, there are so many things that I think they all of 4 of those things play into each other. Because generally, if you're passionate about something, then it is going to be a good product. But those are the 4 things. And then, do you have anything else that you'd add to that list? Any things that you would want to second on? Or, we can end the podcast here. Go ahead.
The list was based on what you need if you're going to be in sales
or an entrepreneur. Yeah.
I would maybe add, and I think I agree with those things. I think self-awareness. Don't try to be... There's so many impressive people, right, on social media, whatever. Some of them are fake. We think they're impressive, but be very self-aware. I have 3 older brothers. We all have unique differences. We're all very similar in ways too. But if I'm going to try to be one of my brothers, it's just... You need to be self-aware. What are your strengths, your weaknesses? Be humble. There's a lot of fake it till you make it stuff, but it does more harm, in my opinion, to like pretend to be something. And I'm also not saying like be true to yourself.
Yeah, Disney over
I'm
here.
just saying be self-aware.
Yes.
If you're not good at something,
admit it.
How do I get better?
Yes.
How do I delegate it? Whatever. But like, just be self-aware. I guess that's what I would add to the list.
So 5 things, and I think that's right. 5 things, be self-aware. We'll end the podcast here. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks.
This was awesome.
Thanks for the time.
And I'll add this, guys, the quick recap. The reason why I think if you're sitting there at home, you're watching this video, and if you made it through the hour podcast, if you made it through and you're still here at this time, I think the lessons here are a couple things. But number 1, if you failed in a business, that doesn't mean that you should just give up, roll over, and just like not try again. I think the average business person, they fail multiple times. We failed. Like, we both have multiple times to get to where we're going to and we're at right now. So don't give up if you're doing that. The second story is that it is really important to surround yourself with good, loving people. That when you're going through your downs, when you're going through those valleys, that you have someone to lean on to kind of help get you through those. Yeah. And there generally is light at the end of the tunnel. So if you are sitting there and you are in one of these valleys, in your job, in your company, I have always believed that you can outwork your valley. And what I mean by that is there's the fight or the flight mentality. Some people, when the valleys come, they run. They're like, all right, hard times. Instead of doing that, if you face it head on, I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to work out, but your percentage of it working out is a whole lot higher than you just running and hiding from those challenges. And I think Derek is an example of what it means to have a whole just crazy story of starting a business, coming back to it. I mean, it's just a great story, man. I appreciate you having it on this podcast. Last words.
Last word, which I'll try to keep it very quick. I think for our generation specifically, like people our age, maybe older than us, younger than us, there's so much shiny object syndrome. Like grass is greener on the other side, other things, right? People used to stick at jobs longer than us. I don't think one's better than the other, but if you're going to pursue something like this, you're going to have to be willing to stick with it for some time. I haven't even done it long enough to say that, but what I'm trying to come to grips with is just not quitting. Maybe I exit at some point and sell it or whatever, but not actually giving up because it's like, this is too hard. Sticking with it. I just think in anything we pursue, that's something that we need more emphasis on, just doing the boring work and sticking with something that we're committed to, not riding the waves of emotion. So
I love it. Well, that's the perfect way to end us off. Thank you, Derek, for coming. If you're still watching, please subscribe to the channel. Share this video out on social media. I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing this story. I know I've learned a lot today. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.